just make it better. Now that's a familiar refrain when you talk about what Land Rover needed to do when upgrading its iconic Range Rover. The flagship SUV had already grown in size and opulence with the current generation, and now with the midlife upgrade on that fourth generation car, you get more luxury, tweaked looks and a brand new hybrid powertrain. I am in England to drive it, and specifically at the magnificent Blenheim Palace. So this is the mid-cycle update on the Range Rover, which means that it is the same car, it's the same generation, but there are certain styling changes and updates that have certainly been thrown in. I think it's the front grille that's going to grab your attention straight away, because you don't have the three slats anymore. It's a continuous pattern, and it certainly gets your attention, like I said. The headlamp cluster, well, that's been tweaked, but more so from a technology point of view. Laser lighting and the 140 LEDs in that cluster, you can sort of customize that. A few of them switch off for oncoming traffic to reduce the glare, and I think that's pretty cool. Now, there are a few other things, of course, that have changed. The color, this is a new one, and so they call it Byron Blue. I have to say, I would have probably thought it would look dull, but this does look really stately on this car. The entire range of cars we're driving today do have this color on them. The fins on the side, there were 3, now there are 4, and that contrast always works well. New alloy pattern as well, that's a 21-inch, and you do still have the 22-inch option. And at the back, while the rest of the silhouette remains the same, like I said, tail lamp cluster has been updated. Did you hear me saying hybrid? Yes, you did. More specifically, the Range Rover P400e. Inside the cabin is where things get swankier than before. Yes, that was possible apparently. The Velar's Touch Pro Duo screens have been carried over. That means the central stack now gets the 2 touch screens with the floating touch dials on the one below. The 2 screens house pretty much everything you need, from navigation to music to the terrain response system settings. Still really luxurious back here, great use of materials, the leather, the wood, and the seats are updated because they're a little bit deeper now and so more comfortable, says Land Rover. Of course, they still recline. You still have the option of the long wheelbase car, extremely popular in markets like ours. And even on this one though, on the side that's diagonally across from the driver, you can push this seat far up front, and all of that happens with the controls right back here. And it allows you to recline the seat and also have a little footrest that pops out, and you can really relax. So while that's happening, let me also tell you that there are a couple of other things that have changed. You now have a little touch panel of sorts here, which has 4 different functions. You can turn off the volume, you can of course access the reading lights, and then the screen as well, which opens up to the nice panoramic roof and lets some of that sky in. Very nice. Also, the what looks like a drop-down armrest is of course a way to go from a 2-seater to a 3-seater back here, and all you have to do is just press a button. So that's certainly new. It's also electric and automated, and it goes up. The steering controls kind of mimic what's happening up there with the floating dials up front. It does look nice and adds a little sort of tech sophistication, if you will. And of course, you have the touch screen, which lets you control everything else, including the massage function on the seats. In fact, the extended wheelbase has now achieved what Land Rover wanted, to slowly move the Range Rover to Bentley or even Rolls-Royce territory. The current generation car, when it came out in 2013, had already heralded that move, and the arrival of the 4th Range Rover, Velar, last year, explained just why too. Now this car that I'm going to be driving today is the PHEV. That's the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, and that's something that we've seen on the Range Rover before, but it was more experimental. Now it goes mainstream, and that's not surprising given that this is the flagship for Land Rover. Of course, we're not going to get it in India anytime soon. The facelift will though, but on the engines we've been used to, the V8 and the V6 diesels and petrols. The PHEV option, as Land Rover likes to call it, or plug-in hybrid electric vehicle for the uninformed, is also available on the Range Rover Sport. But let's stick to the Range Rover, shall we? Well, you heard all the beeps, and that's of course because we've started wading through the river here, and I don't want to hit any of the ducks that are in the way. Are we clear? Yeah. All right. Now the part that surprises a lot of people, and I have to say, to be honest, surprised me as well, the wading capability on the hybrid, the same as the non-hybrid Range Rover, which is 900 millimeters. Now when you're going off-roading, typically the preference is to opt for a diesel vehicle because you get a lot more torque, and of course that helps you in some sticky situations. Even though, don't forget, a lot of the new four-wheel drive systems, the intelligent ones, are sending power to the different wheels where you need more traction. Having said that, the other thing we don't consciously think of, electric really helps there because you get instant torque. You don't have to, rev hard to build up that torque as you typically would with a conventional car. And even though we've got the EV mode switched off right now, the electric part of the system continues to sort of play a role and throw in a little bit of power when needed. And in that kind of a hairy situation, having that little extra burst of torque instantly certainly helps. It is rather strange though to think about a Range Rover with a 4-cylinder engine under the bonnet. After all, no Range Rover had offered anything but a V8 as standard and subsequently a V6 option until now. Now all of the updates that you've seen on this Range Rover, they're not just restricted to the hybrid. You do get this on the regular Range Rover too, which means that the combustion engine versions will have it, and so we will get it in India as well. Now one little difference that this car and the combustion engine version do have, you remember how with this Range Rover, this generation brought in something called all-terrain progress control. Well, the hybrid doesn't need it because of course the electric part of the car, which supplies enough torque to all the wheels at all times, kind of mimics that system anyway, and so which is why it doesn't have it, but the regular one still will. The 2-litre INGENIUM engine puts out 294 bhp, but combined output is 396 bhp. And you get a whopping 640 Nm of peak torque that's available instantly, like I said. That makes the PHEV more powerful than the standard V6 variants, though lower than the V8 supercharged variants, of course. The car can run in pure electric mode, eerily silently I may add, for 51 kilometers. The car will go as fast as 130 kilometers per hour on pure electric mode as well. It responds with surprising alacrity given its size and bulk. And honestly, the performance can put many more powerful engines to shame. The drive is also stately and smooth, with nary a flinch except at higher speeds, where the sheer weight of the car starts to play catch-up. The hybrid system has something called a save mode, which is rather interesting, and it's something new because what it does is it allows you to actually save up the electric power for when you want to use it and not throughout your journey. So let's say you start off from home on a full charge from the countryside and you want to get towards the city, but you only want to use pure EV at the end of your journey. Well, you get to decide and customize that because you save it at the start and use it only later. bad it's not coming to us though, but let's be fair. To the Range Rover customer in India, it will be the softness of the leather, the clarity of the speakers, the feel of the plush carpeting and the firmness of the massage function that will matter the most. So from that point of view, the Range Rover will now pamper you even more. And all of that stuff is most definitely going to be on offer when the car debuts in India later in the year. Expect prices to stay sky high, but then that in itself is part of the allure to this buyer anyway, isn't it?